Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Trish Porco, and I'm currently serving as the Vice President of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our Chamber, I'm pleased to welcome everyone today to the Fireside Chat with Mayor Christian Provenzano. To begin, I would like to acknowledge and recognize that we are holding this meeting on the traditional, tutorial, and ancestral lands of the Ojibwe people from the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations. To the Ashnomic people, the sacred and spiritual place has been known since time in an memorial of the Bawading. We wish to honor the original people on this part of Turtle Island as we recognize their homelands in the spirit of partnership and reconciliation. The Chamber of Commerce believes that there is great value in holding open discussions with our elected officials. This format allows us to cover issues of public interest and interest to the specifics of business in our community in an informal manner. As a chamber, we also feel that it is important that we provide our members with opportunities to remain engaged with our elected representatives. Should you have any questions, please feel free to use our chat box at the bottom of the screen, and we will do our best to get to those. Should we feel that any way there's been a security breach within this format, our fireside chat will be immediately ceased and rescheduled to a different time. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge some special guests joining us today. We have Councillors Donna Hilsinger, Lisa Bezo-Allen, and CAO Malcolm White, and several other staff members of the Sault Ste. Marie City. From our Chamber's Board of Directors and past presidents, we have President Michael Stone, Jason Nacarado, Derek Jackson, who is our Chair of Strive Young Professionals Group, and Sheila Purvis. Our Chamber staff is also with us today. We have Bob Burns, Don Ferguson, and Roy Ring. And also welcome to all of our media partners. Today's Fireside Chat will be led by Chamber President Mike Stone, TD Wealth Management Advisor, and please take it away, Mike.
All right, thank you very much, Trish, and good afternoon, I guess, everybody. We've now crossed the noon threshold, so it's a good thing you said good morning because I had to change that. I was totally going to say good morning. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, Mayor Provenzano, and thank you for joining us today. We know you have a very busy schedule, and we truly appreciate your time. So thank you very much for joining us today. So maybe let's talk about some of the important stuff first. How are you? How's your family doing?
Yeah, so let me begin by kind of thank you for having me. We appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak to your members. And I want to really start off by thanking all of the Chamber members and the businesses in our community for the work they've done over the last year. This has been a very challenging year for all of us, and I've been continually impressed by the fortitude and strength of our business community. And I want to recognize that, and I want to thank you for it. To your question, everybody's doing very well. My oldest, Isla, turns 5 next week. I was telling Rory before this started, I don't know where that 5 years has gone, but it is certainly gone. And Chloe and Dallas are both well too, and so is my wife. So I'm grateful that we a year into this, we're keeping it together, and we're hopeful and optimistic that this year will end much better than last year began.
Excellent, good. As someone with a 2- and 4-year-old, I can appreciate the home challenges that are added to already a stressful job. So great to hear. Glad all is well. And I guess with that being said, maybe we'll jump right into the business at hand, given we've only got a small window of time. So I believe Rory had sent you some outline of some various topics that we'd like to cover today. Before we jump into that, if you want to take a minute or two and just address if you have any topics you wanted to chat about before we got into it, or if you'd prefer I just jump right into the questions, we can do that, whatever you prefer.
So look, yeah, Rory sent me some questions last night. I don't plan on reading off any notes. There's one question where I will look at some notes just because I want to really be detailed about what the city did undertake, because I want to recognize city staff who I've been very proud to work with over the last year. And I think they've done an exceptional job in helping us through this pandemic and dealing with it. But look, I don't want to go on. What I want to do is answer all your questions, and then if we have time, I'd be happy to take questions from the floor. I always like being able to kind of speak people directly and answer whatever they may be looking for an answer to. So if we can get going, that'd be great, because I'd be happy to leave time for your membership to ask me any additional questions they might have off the floor.
Perfect. That sounds great. And a lot of these questions have already come from the membership, but just for everyone else on the line, I will do my best, or we will do our best to monitor the chat box as well in case something else pops up that we can add. And if we kind of get through the questions that everyone had kind of pre-sent, or we get through enough of them, then we can move on to either live questions or chat room box questions. So please feel free to participate. All right, having said that, let's jump in here. So what has been the biggest challenge for city operations during the pandemic, and what is the city prioritizing for the recovery?
Okay, so with respect to the challenge, I mean, the city, like the rest of the organizations in our community, is an employer, and the city is a large employer. So while we have had to work to make sure the city had a holistic, not the municipality, the municipal corporation, but the city itself had a proper response to COVID. We also had to manage the municipal corporation, and we had to go through the same things that employers had to go through over the last year. We had to go through the process of people working from home and determining who was going to work from home. We had to go through the process of assessing our own workspace to make sure that it was safe for the people that work here. But we had to do this all in the context of continuing to provide essential services, right? So, fire is an essential service, and we got to make sure that keeps going. We got to make sure that our firefighters are not exposed in a way where we lose a whole bunch of them and can't properly respond to an emergency in the community. Same with transit. Transit's an essential service, and so is public works, right? We need to make sure that our public works department can still serve the community, keep the roads clean, keep picking up the garbage, and keep doing what we need to do to keep the community safe, including policing. So in the midst of the challenges of the pandemic, we had to manage our workforce, but also make sure that we were still delivering those really important public services. And I think, the city staff have done a good job of that. And I think we have, over the last year, found a really good balance of being able to make sure we take care of our employees and treat them properly, but at the same time, make sure we're providing those really critical services to the community through that time. One of the services that we do provide is we quarterback emergency management. So we have emergency management staff, and we have an emergency management committee that we obviously activated early on in the pandemic. And we've been working with community partners to make sure over the past year that the community had a good and proper COVID response. And I think it has. And I think I want to just take a minute to recognize that there are a lot of people in our community that have worked really hard to follow the public health advice. And we are one of the safest communities in the province of Ontario, and we have one of the lowest prevalences in the province of Ontario. And that is partly due, I think, in some degree to our geography, but it's also due to a lot of great work from people across the community, chamber included, chambers members included, city staff, and our public health partners. Really good work going on at all levels of the community to keep the community safe. And I want to recognize that. I'm really proud of the community and how it's managed through this pandemic. And I think to some degree, the proof is in the numbers. So I'm really satisfied that the city was able to manage its operations through the open and closing and up and down of this pandemic, but at the same time, make sure those essential services were provided, and also make sure that our emergency management response was appropriate to the circumstances.
All right, thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we all echo the hard work done by the city, the businesses, and just basically everyone who lives in our great city has done such a fantastic job to keep the numbers down. It's been truly amazing. So what are you hearing from businesses?
Oh, sorry,
go ahead.
Just before I get to that, you asked about priorities, and I'll just say this and that, and we can get
Absolutely.
to what we're hearing from businesses. We're focused right now on making sure that our vaccination rollout is as efficient as it can be. As you're aware, we don't have any ability to determine how many vaccines we get or when we get them, and we don't determine the priority of when people are vaccinated. But where we really can contribute is making sure that whatever doses we get and whatever priority the province sets on those, that we have the local infrastructures to get those doses into people's arms. And we're working with the Algoma Health team and Algoma Public Health. I think people are aware now that we're using the Memorial Gardens for the mass vaccination clinic. And I'm confident that in working together, this community will have a very solid response, and we will get the vaccines out as quickly as we can. So that's an immediate priority. To your next question, which is what am I hearing from businesses? I am one, right? So we have 8 employees over at my little office there, and I'm experiencing the same things I'm hearing from people. It's really difficult to understand how to modulate the open and close, to kind of sort out, how the emergency order affects the stay-at-home order, affects like the different pieces of public health advice we're getting. And I think there's something inherently, and I don't want this to be taken as a criticism at all, but I think there's something inherently inconsistent with the public health advice, which is stay at home, right? Keep distant from people, and an economy being open, right? So like we've had some challenges, and you've seen that, where businesses are trying to figure out what they can and can't do, when they can and can't do it, because I think largely our community all wants to comply. And I think our businesses have made a significant effort to make sure they're in line with what the expectations on them are. At different points, it's been difficult to determine what the expectations are, because it's been a challenging time for all levels of government. And this is frankly new to everybody. It's not new a year in, but it was certainly new a year ago. So I think businesses have been having a difficult time adapting to that. And then you have the issue of revenues, right? So if you're not seeing clients, if you're not seeing customers, you have to manage through those revenue challenges, because often you might be down on your revenues, but your expenses, you have some fixed expenses that aren't going anywhere. So those have been challenging to manage. And I think, largely that we've done a good job in our business community managing these challenges. I'm hopeful that we can all see a light at the end of this tunnel. And I think with mass vaccination, when we get a significant uptake of the vaccine, I think you'll see a lot more activity. And I'm speaking to people around the community, some developers and some business people realtors specifically, that will tell you things are starting to get a lot more active. And I'm hoping that there's some pent up demand that you'll really see come out by summer, late year, and we'll have a bounce back year. But I want the business community to know that we recognize the challenges. We see them. We see the administrative challenges. We see the revenue challenges, and we just appreciate the effort everybody's making to meet this and to really, continue to work to follow public health advice and keep our community safe.
Okay, excellent. And so maybe kind of following along those lines, to the degree that we have any outlook on this at this point, what are the city's reopening plans for the year as it relates to tourism?
Yeah, so like those are really governed by the regulations, right, and by really where where the numbers are at and where cases are at. There's a real risk that we see a jump in cases prior to mass vaccination because of the variants of concern. I mean, if you're tracking this and following it, you see that the variants of concern are on a increasing and taking over actually and growing as maybe the original strain is dropping. And look at what happened in Sudbury, look at what happened in North Bay, look what's happening in Thunder Bay. You can see your cases turn really quickly. So, it's hard, to determine where you're going, because that's largely going to be determined by the province and its regulations and its parameters. But tourism is focused on its marketing plans. It's focused on attracting, what it sees as a very domestic market, like an Ontario-based market. And, the tourism staff are working, hard with Tourism Sault Ste. Marie to try and do what it can to be ready for the tourism season when that starts and what that looks like. But we're not entirely sure right now what it looks like, because you still have the province, and rightfully, I don't disagree with this, encouraging people to stay home, encouraging people not to travel to other places. And look, I had a call with my mayoral colleagues just yesterday from Timmins, North Bay, Sudbury, and Thunder Bay. And we had some discussions about different things. We've been keeping in touch throughout this pandemic so we could, make sure that we're communicating with each other, learning from each other, and all picking up best practices. But one of the points I made was that, I wasn't particularly interested in a Northern Ontario bubble, because as the case is right now, I'd like people to stay in their regions, because the reality is the variants of concern are in Northern Ontario in large quantities in different places. And we can get that variant of concern from Sudbury. We can get it from North Bay. We can get it from Thunder Bay. And for the time being, until mass vaccination catches up here, I'd like people that don't live in Algoma to stay where they are and not potentially introduce that risk into Algoma, because we can go from having 5 active cases in Algoma, which I think we currently have today, and I'm not sure if any of those are in Sault Ste. Marie, to having 25, 30, 40 active cases within a week. And once a variant of concern takes hold, you can really increase the cases quickly. We saw that spike that happened here after the Christmas break. And, we went from having very few cases to very quickly having 20 cases, 30 cases, 40 cases. That could be accelerated now by the variant. So, I can tell you the team at Tourism Sault Ste. Marie is working hard. They're working with the hoteliers. They're working to look at what we can do. But that's going to be largely governed by what this looks like in June, July, August. And, it can go in the right direction. Particularly if we can speed up the vaccination schedule, and if it looks like we can get vaccinated earlier than the fall, you might have a more productive summer. But if vaccinations don't really get a significant amount of uptake across the province until the fall, I think you'll have a slower summer. So there's some variables that are the jury's still out in a few things, but we're keeping a close eye on it, and we're watching it, and we're working at it.
Okay, great. Thank you. No, absolutely. We're definitely not out of the woods yet. On the I was going to say on the my train of thought was to continue on the tourism and no pun intended. What are the status? What is the status on the city's negotiations with the Agawa train situation?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure that I understood the question. So is it generally, what are we negotiating with CN, or where's the tour train at right now? Because
I guess it's probably in general, just where are we at with the train? Is it going to be happening? I mean, obviously there's going to be a COVID issue there, whether it's allowed to happen, but from the standpoint of,
I can say this: we are we actively communicate with CN about that asset. It's something that the city is very concerned about and focused on, because I think, as everybody in this call is probably aware, CN is selling its assets in this area, and those assets that they're selling, we call them the ACR assets, but the assets that they're selling, that they've hired an investment bank to help them with the disposition of, include the tour train. So the city is really concerned to see that the tour train goes to an operator of the tour train that has a specific interest in operating a tourism asset. We wouldn't want to see the tour train be purchased by, a rail outfit that is primarily concerned with moving freight and is interested in those assets because they want to move freight, and they're just getting the tour train because it's part of those assets. So, there's ongoing discussion to ensure that whomever is ultimately the owner of the tour train, because it looks like it will be sold, and it will be sold in the near term, is an operator that wants to operate it, wants to work with us to operate it. So I can tell you that city staff have been very active in that respect. There's been communications with CN. There's been communications with the investment bank that is helping it with its sale. There's been outreach and communications with our provincial partners to get their perspective and to kind of communicate our perspective. So the rail file is a very active one. I can say sincerely, it's one that we are paying attention to, because we have some concern about, because the disposition of that train and the owner of that train and the operation of that train is really critical to tourism in Sault Ste. Marie and what tourism could be in Sault Ste. Marie. I personally believe the train could be even more successful than it currently is. And we think it could draw more people and generate more revenue and be an even bigger attraction, but it needs an operator that wants to operate it. It needs an operator that will make the right investments in it. So as best as we can, based on our kind of external position, we're going to do what we can to influence that.
Excellent. Good. No, I think that would be obviously in the city's best interest. It's funny, you don't realize how world famous that train actually is. I had a friend that was on a cruise once in the Caribbean doing a trivia night, and a piece of trivia actually came up about a world famous train, and the answer was the Sault Ste. Marie Agawa Canyon train, and this was an international cruise, and that's how well known it was.
That's awesome. I always love hearing stories like that.
All right, a question now about our film industry. Is the city combining the role of the film office and the arts and culture office? And has there been any consultation with the industry? Is there not a concern that as we have looked to grow this sector, that key resources and industry connectivity will be lost with our competitive advantage?
Yeah, so look, I would personally prefer that we have independent roles, but so to answer your question, yes, those roles are being combined. I don't know to what extent community services canvassed or engaged with the sectors when they made that decision. It's not. I don't think it's very common that staff seek a lot of outside kind of input on staffing, because staffing is largely controlled by the budget. And as everybody's aware, we had resources for future Sault Ste. Marie that are coming to an end. In fitting these positions in the broader municipal budget would have taken a levy increase to keep all the positions that we wanted to keep. I would have preferred, certainly personally, I would have preferred to have an independent person in film and an independent person in arts and culture. But those are two separate FTEs. That would be two full-time jobs that would have, full-time salary and benefits. And when staff was developing the budgets on a going forward basis, they made a determination that they in the interest of prudence and trying to keep the levy down, would amalgamate those roles. So, it's often not a question of all of what we want. It's often a question of what we can do at the same time, while being respectful to the taxpayer and really working to try and minimize the impact on the levy. So in an ideal world, I happily vote in favor of keeping them separate and having those extra positions. I would love somebody in City Hall to focus on one and somebody in City Hall to focus on the other. And hopefully we can get there. Hopefully we could get some organic growth in our revenues. Hopefully the chamber, I know the Ontario Chamber has lobbied the provincial government to look at specific things to help the fiscal sustainability of municipalities. Hopefully they'll be effective in that respect, and I'd be happy to join them because really the model upon which municipalities are funded is antiquated, and it's difficult to generate the revenues that you need to generate to do the things that are expected of you. And so, we have to make some difficult decisions. And I think this would be an example of a decision where we didn't determine we could rationalize an increase in the levy to have these positions separate at this point. I certainly would be supportive of that, but not as a levy addition. I would want to see revenues come from elsewhere to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. I just have a quick follow-up here. One of our members on the line, Robert, if you take a minute, if you want to ask your follow-up question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It was my question, and I was sort of asking it on behalf of our company, which is a post-production company here, but also all the services, other production companies, hotels, all the other services that benefit from the film industry. I would love to make a presentation to City Council about this, and I've been asked to by our industry. But most importantly, I just wanted it to be clarified that, of course, we wouldn't be making staffing choices, but we would love to sit down with staff or with council or whoever to talk about the role of the film office, however it's going to be managed. And by the way, I think there would be very fast buy-in from the partners in this industry to help fund a position at the city. And the value of having it at the city, obvious, is the integration into all the issues that come up with films coming to the city. This position, I'm not sure if you're aware, but ending this in July and starting from scratch has already rattled the films that were supposed to come here last summer and are coming here this summer. We have a full schedule of work, and I have no idea how that's going to work with the office dismantling and reassembling with new people in the middle of a busy film season. I think just some outreach and consultation with our group, or with myself representing the group, would go a long way to trying to make this work as this is a service for our industry. So I think it would be valuable for our industry to have some input into the value of the service and what are the best uses of it. It has been, if not for COVID, I think council would have seen the value that the current holder of that position has brought to the film industry. It's about relationships. It's about networking. It is not a 9-to-5 job like some of the other things. And it kind of has nothing to do with the other office. So combining them is a bit strange. But the biggest thing is that, you know, the film industry and the money that came into the city in 2019 was so much greater than we did when we didn't have this office, and it would have been 2 or 3 times that much had we not had to delay productions till this year. So I think there's the economic case may be more difficult on the culture and arts side, but from the film side, I don't know how there isn't an economic case. Bottom line is we'd love to sit down and talk about the future of it and how it could best serve our industry.
So first off, thank you for those comments. I appreciate them. I wasn't aware of any disruption. But look, I can tell you this, we'll get you in here, we'll sit down, we'll have those conversations. I'm happy to facilitate that. I'm happy to ensure that they happen, and we can do that very quickly. We appreciate you here in Sault Ste. Marie. We're glad your company's here. We appreciate your work. And I do want to just recognize that the person that we have in the role, I do believe has done a phenomenal job, and I've seen the increase in activity, and I am personally supportive of having that role. So you know, at budget time this year, there were a number of things, and we might get to them through some of these other questions that council wanted to do, but didn't do because they would have been levy additions, and adding FTEs are levy additions, and so we were sensitive to that. But look, all of this to say, I'd love to have you in. We'd love to have these conversations, and my office will reach out to you subsequent to this in very short order, and we'll make sure we get together and talk about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the follow-up, Robert, and Mayor Provenzano. Appreciate you taking that question. Okay, moving along here. What is the rationale for moving the bus terminal, and what impacts will this have on downtown revitalization? Is this part of the downtown strategic plan that the city has? And would this perhaps be counterproductive to the downtown revitalization efforts?
Okay, so you know, I gotta unpack a few things here. So this has been going on for a couple of years now, and it's recently got a lot of attention. So it's more of a communal discussion, and I welcome that, because frankly, we set out a few years ago to make sure that we had a better transit system. We were sorely underinvested in transit. We hadn't you know, looked at our routes in years. Our buses were, I think, twice the average age of a bus in Ontario. I think the average age of a bus in Ontario is somewhere around 6 years, and ours was somewhere over 12 years. Most of our buses were used. And frankly, we saw an opportunity to provide better services to the community and the importance of it. We really believe we should start focusing on our transit system to make sure it is user-friendly and it is accessible. From my perspective, transit's a matter of equity. You know, there's a lot of people in the community that can't afford a vehicle, or you know, the associated cost with a vehicle, and they depend on our transit system to get around the community. And it's unfair if it doesn't do that properly. So we undertook a route optimization study. We developed a plan where we had more than one transfer point, and as a result of that, and looking at the whole holistic transit system, we realized we needed to do some work on our bus barns, and obviously our transit terminal is very old. And so what the city staff is trying to do, and I want to be clear, this moving the terminal is not a political decision. It wasn't something that was motivated by city council. There's no motion from a councillor saying we want to move the terminal. This stuff comes from city staffs working through our strategic plans and our planning. And they're trying to develop a transit system, not for the present, but for the future. And the reality is it's a very old terminal, and having a one terminal system is a different model that we've moved away from. You know, we're doing some really innovative pilot project with Transit on Demand, and we are making sure that our routes are optimized and working better. We're going to have a northern transfer point. So, you know, what is happening now is staff is undertaking, with the consent and direction of council, an EA, environmental assessment. Whenever you deal with something that relates to transit, you have to go through one of these processes. And they determined that if we do not leave the transit station where it is, at Dennis and Queen, that the best place for it would be to amalgamate it with our bus barns. So it's in fairly close proximity to the current spot, but it would be an amalgamation of services. We would be shrinking our footprint. We would be, to some degree, becoming more efficient. But if that isn't approved by council in the final analysis, when the EA comes back, the bus terminal stays where it is. So, you know, that's still an option that might occur. Now, there's this concern, and the concern that's been expressed to me is if you move it from Dennis Street to where your current bus barns are, it will lead to a decrease in traffic and activity downtown. And I think there was a presumption in your question that that is a foregone conclusion. I don't know that that's a foregone conclusion. But what I've said to staff is I'm not going to ultimately support something that would have a deleterious effect on the traffic downtown. But I think there are somewhere north of 40 stops in the downtown, and we are not reducing any stops in the downtown. But we are doing now, and staff recognizes they're going to need this information for council, is making a determination about how many people get off at the Dennis Street terminal and are pedestrians from there, and move out from there and create pedestrian activity from there. Or how many people are taking the bus into the downtown core and getting off on other stops that moving that would not affect. So I would agree that council is going to need a better sense of what is going to happen to the traffic, the foot traffic on Queen Street, and the activity, the commercial activity on Queen Street, before it makes the ultimate decision to move it to that location. And staff is going to have to return that information to us, and they will. I don't think anybody on council wants to do anything that's going to have a negative effect on our downtown, but I think we've demonstrated that we're really, you know, engaged in investing in improving our downtown. So the jury's still out on that, and we'll get that information back, and I think we'll make, frankly, a decision based on the information. And I really hope the council doesn't make a political decision, but makes a substantive decision based on the information that is in front of it. And that's what I'll encourage it to do. And I trust council will do that. In the end, we have a lot of stakeholder groups that we have to be sensitive to and take into consideration. But when it comes to transit, like our primary stakeholder group is the transit user. And we have to make sure we're developing a system that encourages use and makes use convenient and helps people get around our community. The other thing, what we will also have to consider is if we don't move it, what's the cost of actually redeveloping that terminal into something that's acceptable and something that is accessible, right? So one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that we have, you know, a new and accessible terminal that is nice to look at and nice to use in a comfortable place. And if we're going to leave it where it is, in my opinion, the status quo is not acceptable. So we have to consider the costs of converting what's there into an acceptable building for transit use and for our transit customers. But the primary group we have to focus on serving here is the transit user. And that, in my opinion, has to really drive our decision. But our decision should be driven by fact and should be driven by information. So I'm hopeful staff will return the information to council so it can make an appropriate decision on this. And if we don't move it, it stays where it is. Those are the two options that are before council, and I trust council in the final analysis. Whatever decision council makes will be the right decision.
Thank you very much, excuse me, for clarifying and providing a lot more color around that. Because yes, you're right. It has definitely been something that's been a hot topic in the news over the last couple months. Sticking with the downtown, what support will the city be giving our downtown core in response to some of the vandalism, drug use, and theft that we've been seeing as of late?
Yeah. So look, there's probably nothing that I have talked to the police chief more about than this. And there's probably nothing the police chief has talked about more than this with people in our community. There's part of the challenge we have, and the chief has said this, time and again publicly. He identifies two significant issues that need to be addressed for us to be successful and getting people the help that they need. First is, he identifies Bill C-75, which is a federal piece of legislation, which he calls catch and release as a real significant problem. That's a legal matter, and I'm working through with him what those issues are, and we've got the support of the NOLA mayors to canvass that issue collectively. The second issue is, the chief said this time and again, I think city council said this time and again, since the pandemic began, we've gone backwards in our support services for people who have addiction challenges and need withdrawal support. We've lost our detox, and that's not been replaced to the degree that it needs to be. And the police officers will tell you that they'll pick people up and there's nowhere to bring them. And the reality is that a lot of the people that have challenges in our community, they're not criminals. And some of those challenges might result in criminal activities, but we cannot criminalize substance users. You have to criminalize the production of the substance, and you have to criminalize the distribution of the substance. And we have a chief who's focused on that, but we don't want to criminalize the user of the substance. And a lot of the challenges in our downtown relate to substance abuse and mental health issues. And frankly, the support system simply isn't there that's needed. And we need a significant investment across our province, but really in Northern Ontario, you see these issues more acutely. I spoke to the mayors of Sudbury, Thunder Bay, North Bay, and Timmins about this just yesterday. And they're seeing the same things in their community and the same challenges in their community. So we need help. We need help. And we need help to be able to give people in our community the healthcare they deserve. This is a healthcare issue, and we need that. Now, as opposed to what we're doing, I can tell you specifically that the chief has increased patrols. He has increased foot traffic. We're working with the Downtown Association, and we're doing our best to try and find some solutions to these challenges. I want to just recognize the DSAB and the really good work the DSAB is doing, and the effort the DSAB is making to provide resources and support for people in need downtown. And we lost our resource center at the beginning of COVID, which was another loss. We are going to be replacing that shortly through the DSAB. They did some great work to find another location, and they're going to be into that and opening that to the public soon. That should also help. So these are pressing issues. I see them myself. I hear about them from business owners and operators on Queen Street, and they are something that are top of mind. I can say that a day doesn't go by where these discussions aren't had, and we're not looking at what we can do and what more we can do. But I assure everybody that we're working together. The GOMA leadership team works together. The DSAB works closely with the city. The city works closely with Sault Ste. Marie Police. And I have a lot of confidence that Chief Stevenson cares about these issues, and he works closely with community partners to address them as best we can. In his opinion, which is an opinion I share, we need some structural changes, both to the system that governs kind of what happens when people are picked up and what kind of supports are available to them when they are, and having resources in our community that are adequate to address the mental health and addiction challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely an issue that's on, or at least in the back of everyone's mind as a community. It's something that I'm sure we'd all love to see some improvement. Switching gears now, given the Economic Development Office has been restructured and we've lost some personnel and we've had some real changeover, what are the plans for economic development in Sault Ste. Marie? There is a bit of concern that there's no connectivity to the manufacturing sector in the Soo. While tourism is one aspect of job creation, we need some advanced manufacturing and industrial jobs to create, or opportunities to create some high-paying jobs in those sectors.
So, there has been some evolution and change and adjustment at the EDC. The city has taken that in-house and has incorporated it into its economic development, its corporate and community development department, so that we kind of breaking down some silos and we have a more holistic approach between community development and economic development. And there's been some change. So I just want to recognize the really good people that have moved on and that have I'm happy to see have other employment in the community with some private sector enterprises. I think they'll bring a lot of great skill and ability to those enterprises and improve those enterprises. So I want to thank them for their work when they were at the EDC and for a short period when they were at the city. And we appreciate their contributions, and they're talented people. And I'm always happy to see talented people in our community and working in different operations in our community, even if they're not in city operations. But the city is still working with the Economic Development Corporation Board as a consultative board. And the city does still have the economic development plan that's been developed. And the city is staffing up its economic development department and is confident that we will have a positive and productive 2 years here going through the end of this council term. I believe in the long run, the city's adjustment to economic development will certainly have been the best thing for the community. I think mayors and councils have to be accountable for economic development, but it's very hard to be accountable for economic development when you don't have the resources or the staff that answer to you for economic development. And you know, we've implemented that model now, which is a common model across municipalities in Ontario. With your specific respect to manufacturing, I just want to point to the good news at Tenaris and the developments there and the significant investment that they'll be making in our community. The city was happy to work with Tenaris through that process and help them with that process and encourage them to make that investment in the community. And the city was happy to support that investment. And I wanted to recognize the Economic Development Corporation, which also supported that investment. But that investment's north of $100 million and will result in significant, positive, nice, well-paying manufacturing jobs in Sault Ste. Marie. We are in constant contact with Algoma Steel. We communicate with Algoma Steel regularly about how it's doing and what the city can do to support it. I talk to the CEO of Algoma Steel regularly, but I recognize and appreciate the comment that we could be doing more to connect with our small and manufacturing sector. We could, and we need to, and that's an effort that we have to make. I went out to Kena Steel about a year ago and just talked to the operators out there, and they made that same point to me that they think that we could do more to support the small manufacturing in our community, and I accept that. And that's something that I'm confident Tom Bear and his department will work on, and I'm confident that it will have a productive relationship with our manufacturing sector on a going forward basis.
Excellent. We absolutely welcome and look forward to that. Next question relates to the city's budget. So this year's budget is a bit of a concern to many of our members, as it appears that there has been very minimal reduction in costs of operating the city, even though many services have or will have been reduced materially. Every business in the city has been forced to cut costs and reevaluate their spending in order to survive the lockdowns. Given this type of narrative, some feel are just looking for some clarification as to how a tax increase is justified.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about 2021 and not 2020, right? So you want to talk about the 2021 budget?
Right. I mean, I guess it spills back to 2020 as well, because some people looking back at the previous year's numbers will say, well, it looked like we reduced a lot of costs, even though some services were reduced. Obviously, like you said at the beginning, a lot of important services would not be reduced.
Yeah. So so I think it's important to make a few distinctions here. One is that in 2020, the only services that were closed for a period of time, I think it was roughly 4 months, would have been our community centers, like the John Roads, right? A lot of our other services were open and still available to the community and had to stay open, right? So our building and our engineering is obviously still operating. Our human resources is still operating. Our finance is still operating. Our public works is still operating. Fire is still operating. Police are still operating. So there wasn't the city services weren't really shuttered, so to speak. We were largely still operating. Now I can tell you that as of the end of the third quarter in 2020, we had either a revenue loss or an additional COVID expense. If you take those two numbers together, so a decrease in our revenue or an increase in our expenses that relate to COVID of about $7 million. And one of the things that we were really focused on is mitigating that to the greatest degree possible so that that doesn't pass on to next year's levy, because we can't run a deficit. So if we do, it falls through the next year, right? So we didn't want to have a big levy jump relating to a deficit. We in City Hall, and I want to just point specifically to the CEO and his entire senior management team, and then down to our staff. I want to recognize them because their efforts to the end of the third quarter of 2020, they found about $3.5 million of reductions. So I don't think it's quite accurate to suggest that we're not making reductions here. There was reduction in student complement. There was gapping when jobs came open to reduce human resource costs. There were staff was focused on it, and they reduced the city's expenses last year to the end of the third quarter by roughly $3.5 million to close that gap. In budgeting for 2021, we couldn't really assume that city operations wouldn't open at some point. But I would welcome anybody to look at what and I want to be clear, the municipalities levy increase was. So like what our city budget, how that increased. I welcome you to compare that to any of our comparative communities in Northern Ontario. The city council worked hard to keep that increase as low as possible. We reduced budgets to do that. There was a specific budget that we reduced to do that. We didn't add things in that we would have liked to add in. We wanted to introduce a bylaw officer so that we can get more aggressive with some of the properties that are not well kept. But that didn't make it in. We wanted to introduce, we have some additional legal responsibilities. So the legal department asked if we could authorize an FTE for legal, which would also help with our property maintenance issues because we can get those matters before the courts quicker. We didn't approve that. So there were a lot of things in that budget that we didn't approve that we wanted to approve to keep the levy down. And there were reductions that we did make. But the reality is the city has some costs that it has to pay, and those costs don't necessarily stay static year to year. One of the Ontario Chamber's recommendations to the provincial budget to the provinces to look at the interest arbitration system that the city's under with respect to its emergency services. So you have increase in human resource costs that you've got to incorporate into your budget because we can't budget for deficits. And there were things that we continue to have to do on an annual basis because they're essential services. I point out two things on budgeting. The first is that every year when we do our S&P, Standards & Poor's does our rating analysis, they look at our financial management and our financial efforts, and they're always very positive about how we manage financially. But I would point you to the KPMG audit of our services. One of the things that KPMG came back and said, outside of the fact that we are sorely underspending in some areas, and we know we're underspending in IT, and we need to spend in IT to find some efficiencies elsewhere, and I am supportive of doing that and hope it makes it into the next budget, is that as far as municipalities go, we are not doing anything outside of our core services. So there are, I think 75%, it's either 74, 75, 76, somewhere around that range percent of the services that we're providing are statutorily mandated for us to provide. So we have to provide them. And then on top of that, the other quarter that we're providing are discretionary, but they're expected. So there's different types of discretionary services a municipality might provide. For instance, we don't need to have a rink, or we don't need to have a pool. There's nothing in the municipal act that says that we have to operate pools, but you would certainly expect that your community has a pool that your municipality operates. KPMG said that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. And that isn't entirely common in Ontario. And you don't have to look too far to find municipalities that own golf courses or ski hills or different types of assets like that. So we have really pared back what we do to the essential services. And then what you look at is, what are you doing above service level? Like, what are you doing that is greater than what you have to provide? And the only thing they really identified that we were doing above service level was our snow removal. And, I was very clear to staff from my perspective that I don't see any ability to decrease snow removal in Sault Ste. Marie because to decrease our service levels, because we did actually affect that budget. Because there's an expectation here that we provide snow removal to the level that we have historically provided it. And if you deviated from that service level, I think you'd have really a lot of disappointed residents. So I wouldn't be supportive of deviating from our service level. We're actually going to be going through a service level review in snow removal this year, so that in this coming budget, we can make some decisions to make sure that we are providing the right level and that we have the right costing for that right level. So there might very well be a cost in snow removal on a going forward basis. So, you know, all of that to say is I understand and appreciate these issues. I know what I pay in property taxes. I know that property taxes are burdensome to a lot of people. We are doing what we can on the spending end. The area that we have issues and challenges that really need to be addressed is on the revenue end. And you know, when I look at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and the advocacy it's making to the provincial government, I thank it and appreciate it for that, because it recognizes that a lot of the challenges to municipality fiscal sustainability on a long-term basis come from the revenue model that we operate under, right? So, like, we are our main generators of revenue is residential, commercial, and industrial tax. 2020 was supposed to be a reassessment year. So then if we reassessed in 2020 and the assessment went up, that burden would be spread across, you know, more resources. It would be amortized across a greater assessment. That 2020 assessment year was kicked off because of COVID to 2021. So we lose that potential for that reassessment, that potential of additional revenue. And I'm hoping that we see with some of the activity in the community, you know, our assessment improve. If our assessment improves, then our ability to amortize costs over a greater assessment base will improve. But the reality is that municipalities are going to struggle, particularly municipalities that don't have significant growth, like Mississauga and the municipalities in the Peel region, affording the services that we are required to provide to our citizens until there's some significant effort made to address the funding models that support us. So I want to say that I'm comfortable and confident staff made a significant effort to do what they could, and council made a significant effort to do what it could to deliver a very reasonable budget in 2021. The reality is we had a pass balanced budget, and the reality is we had to assume that we were going to be providing the services that it's expected of us to provide, and the services that there's not a lot there for us to get rid of. That we don't not obligated to provide. This council has you know, I should say the previous council did a lot of that, and you know, we don't do daycare services anymore, right? That was something we got out of, and with time we have got out of a lot of things that are not specifically obligated for us to do. We have to keep on focusing on delivering value to the taxpayer and making sure we tax as little as we can. Part of that is shrinking our footprint, right? Part of that is consolidating operations. You know, we got rid of the senior center that was, you know, in the West End there, and we moved the senior center up into a really nice facility, but we reduced all those capital costs that facility needed, and we put the senior center in a new facility that shrunk our footprint. You know, we're looking at the same thing with the bus terminal. The city's doing what it can on a going forward basis to try and anticipate future costs and reduce as it can its expenses. But if you look at our asset management plan, there's a lot of assets that we have that are old. And you have a question about roads in here, and I'd be really happy to speak to that. Just look at the police service building, right? The police service building is old, you know, and the police services feels, I think correctly, that it needs a significant investment in its current building or a new building. A new police service building will be, you know, a significant spend, but it might be something that is a necessary thing that we have to do. Well, where does that go? That goes in the levy. So it's a constant kind of diligent effort to continue to do what you're supposed to do, continue to do it well, continue to do it respectfully of taxpayer dollars, but in a revenue model that really is antiquated and doesn't provide us the resources we need to provide the services that we need. And the burden falls to the people who own property. And that's the model we're in.
Oh, absolutely appreciate your candor on that and the comment. How are you doing for time? We've got a couple questions on the line. I know you're busy. Do you have?
Oh no, I'll keep answering some questions here. I can extend this for a bit. If you have people on the line that want to ask me questions, go ahead.
Okay, I know we've got at least one person on the line, and then I'd love to get back to the because you had brought up the kind of road repair construction. If we want to talk about that as well, but maybe we'll go the question first, and then if you still have a couple of minutes, we can go back to road construction repair.
Sure.
That works. Okay, perfect. Derek, I believe you had asked if you could ask a question or two. If you could get over there. Go ahead.
Hey, Derek.
Hi, thanks, Mike. Hey, thank you. I do just have a quick question. I tried to not take over too much with the Strive's questions, but I do want to jump in and have a few follow-ups here. Regarding the budget and everything, young professionals are extremely happy with the approval of the greenhouse gas reduction plans that you guys have going forward. But we did also notice with the new budget that there is no longer anybody employed by the city to look over the reduction of greenhouse gases and our climate change. So I'm just wondering, does the city have a plan to stay on tune with that and stay on track?
So I'm glad, thanks for that. I'm glad you asked the question, Derek. I appreciate it. I'm also glad that Councillor Hilsinger's on the line. Even though she can't speak, she can hear me. And I'll say this, she's bugging me about this very consistently, and the importance of that position and keeping that position and keeping on this and moving forward with it. So I can tell you it's a live issue and it's something that we are looking at, and she certainly wants to find a solution to. And I told her that I would work with her to try and find a solution to that too. I can tell you staff are looking at it and looking for, trying to find potential ways to, primarily first thing we look at is external funding methods and see if we can find those. And then if not, internal funding methods, but again, that ends up on the levy. But look, I'm going to say these are critically important issues. We are playing catch up, and we need to do more. And we need to take this much more seriously than we have as a municipality. And we need to do as much as we can as a community, because this is a crisis that is not going to go away unless there's collective effort internationally. And this is something that is really being led by our youth there, by people like you. And we need to listen to you, and we need to find ways to do more. I'm glad that we got to where we got to so far, but we need to play catch up, and we need to jump ahead here a bit. So I'm supportive of continuing on with that position, but we've got to find a way to do that.
Thank you. And I have one more quick question. You mentioned earlier that it's really tricky with the difference of messaging from businesses and from health officials regarding COVID-19, as we're going to stay at home and all that, but we also want to see businesses open. With Strive in the Chamber, collectively, we do have the Algoma Vaccination Support Council. Will the city be looking to join with that as one of our larger employers here in the Soo?
So, Derek, just to be frank, I'm going to have to familiarize myself with it, but the city right now, its focus is on supporting the Algoma Health team and Algoma Public Health as they develop the infrastructure to roll out the actual vaccine in the community. I'd be happy to consider what your group is and what role it's going to play, and see what role there would be for the city in that. But primarily right now, we're focusing all of any extra effort we have or attention we have on helping Algoma Public Health, helping the Algoma Health team, and making sure we can run a great mass vaccination clinic here that gets whatever doses we get in people's arms as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you. I'll let it go back to you, Mike, to take over again.
Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, no, that's a great thanks for bringing up those points, Derek. And if anyone from the city is looking for something to do tomorrow at 9 a.m., that's when the council has their next vaccination meeting. So I was on the meeting last week, and it was fantastic to see so many employers come out, kind of looking to get a strategy to see how best to get the information out, to the citizens and the household as to why we need to get shots in the arms. Because I mean, the Soo is no exception to this. There's definitely a lot of statistics out there that say some people just aren't willing to get a shot yet, and they don't believe in the science. And the goal from that committee, which is a hugely important goal, is to get over that hump. So I applaud their efforts. So tomorrow 9 a.m. if no one has anything to do, you should join that call. So let's just go back to the road construction. You had mentioned that in one of your previous comments, and just said you'd be happy to get into repair and construction. So maybe I'll just kind of leave it open-ended for you to go into that area. So
this road construction is a really great example of what happens when you zero out a budget year over year over year over year, right? So, our capital spend on roads is bigger than our capital spend on anything else. But the reality is we've not increased our roads budget for years. And I don't mean for 4 years, I mean 4 years, the roads budget has been static. And frankly, Don Elliott and his team and Larry Girardi and their team need more money and deserve more resources to improve our roads. And I can tell you there was a movement afoot this council year to increase the roads budget for 2021. But COVID derailed that. A number of councils approached me about it. They asked me what I thought. They asked me if I'd support it. They were looking to kind of move forward with introducing an increase to those budgets for 2021 so that we had more resources for roads. And that was at the beginning of, it was frankly at the end of 2019 when we were planning 2020, at the beginning of 2020 when it didn't make it in the 2020 budget. We had a lot of discussions about that with a few different councillors, and it was going to come as a introduction to the 2021 budget. But due to COVID and due to the sensitivity about only putting what we needed to put in the 2021 budget because people would have been struggling, and we recognized that we didn't want to add to the tax burden at that time. The councillors that were considering it decided they would have to kind of assess it for the 2022 budget. So I expect that if things trend the way they are, if the max vaccination goes well, if things get back to normal and we're all kind of doing engaged in life like we were a year and a bit ago, that might very well be a discussion that you see for 2021, because the reality is that we need to invest more monies in our roads. There were years where the city budget was just zeroed out every year for a number of years over a couple council terms, and that really sets you back, right? When you don't even have an inflationary increase, it reduces your spending power, it reduces your buying power. So like you can do less with as years go on. Generally speaking, you don't get to do more with less money. Things get more expensive, so your money doesn't go as far. So it's a need. It's a need I will support, and I think we really are asking a lot of our leadership team in engineering and public works to do what they're doing with the resources that they have, and I think they're largely delivering. But the reality is that we have a lot of old roads, and those roads are really getting beaten up by the freeze thaw cycle that we're seeing now. When things get warmer and they get cold, and they get warmer and they get cold, that's the worst thing. I've talked to Larry about this. I know that when we have a wet fall, Larry Girardi's scratching his head and he's disappointed because he's concerned about what's going to happen to the road base. He's concerned about how many potholes that's going to result in, and it really concerns him when we go into winter with a really wet fall. And you see that. And then now what we're seeing in the winters, we're starting winter and then things freeze and then they thaw. And then they freeze and then they thaw. And that's a real challenge to our road bases and our roads. So it's something that has to be addressed. I respect the question and I recognize we have to do more.
That's funny. I can just picture Larry sitting there stressing over the rains and the falls.
Yeah, I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. I mean, this year we obviously got a lot less snow, but then with less snow, we save money on snow removal, but then you lose on the fact that you get the freeze thaw. So kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't here, it seems. Okay, that's really all the questions we have that were pre-given by members. Is there anyone on the line that if Mayor Provenzano has another minute or two that really would like to get something out, either throw it in the chat room, or if you want to, you can raise your hand either on your video or with your little icon. But if I don't see anything, I will hand things back to Trish, and she can. All right, I'm not seeing anything. So Mayor Provenzano, thank you so much. I appreciate your responses, you giving us the time. I know you're busy, so this is truly something that is important to the chamber to be able to have access to you, and we thank you and your staff again for making that work. Trish, I will. Sorry, actually.
Yeah. Just want to
if you have anything else to add, please do.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to thank you, Trish and Rory and the team at the chamber. I am a chamber member, but I want to thank you for doing this and connecting me with everybody. But I just want to tell everybody that is on the line, whatever your comments or concerns are, or ideas, or if you want to pass something along, I have an open door. I'm not seeing a lot of people personally, but I'm doing a lot of these meetings. Notwithstanding the fact that we've been doing this for a year, I still find it really strange to stare into a camera and speak to everybody. But I'm available to you. And if anybody wants to meet with me, if anybody wants to talk to me, if anybody wants to canvas something, just reach out to my office and we'll set a time, and we'll do it this way until we can get back together. And when we can get back together, I'd be happy to host whomever wants to talk to me in City Hall. I'm available to all of you. I've got a lot of confidence in this council and its ability to make good decisions. And I've got a lot of confidence in city staff and the leadership of our CAO and his senior management team. And, you know, I know we can do well as a community, and I feel strongly and I'm optimistic that as we come out of COVID, we're going to see a real bounce back in our community, and we have brighter and more positive days ahead. And I just like to end with a message that I encourage all of you to continue to work to stay safe, continue to work to encourage your family and friends to stay safe, and continue to follow public health advice, because we're not through this yet. And I'm committed to having an efficient and effective vaccine rollout program here in Sault Ste. Marie, but we need to get the vaccines and we need to get them out. So we need to continue to work together to keep each other and ourselves safe while we do that. And I'm here for all of you. I'm open to any of your questions, comments, concerns, and ideas. And I look forward to working with you throughout this year as we hit a more positive trajectory here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's very well put. Thank you. All right, Trish, I'll send it back over to you, please.
Thanks, Mike. Again, thank you to all of you for joining us today and your continued support of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce. Your engagement benefits local business and the community as a whole. And we thank you for always being part of our conversations. If you're not a member, please consider joining. We are the most trusted organization to represent your business, get you any important information, connect you with your leaders, government officials, business leaders, and most of all, connecting all of us together, which is very important through the course of every year. We also thank you for your fortitude through this last year. You've all shown they have been very challenging for sure. And finally, to Mayor Provenzano, thank you very much for taking part in today's discussion. With the changes and challenges today that businesses are facing, discussions such as this provide our membership with an opportunity to gain insight into the decision-making process and the considerations taken while making all these changes. So thank you very much. And just one last reminder before we sign off today. We are proud to announce on Monday is our Women in Business celebration, obviously tweaking it a little bit from our Women in Business breakfast that's normally held. It is proud sponsored by TD and OLG. It's on International Women's Day, which is Monday, March the 8th. It will be occurring 11:30 to 1. The link is available on the Chamber's website and our social media platforms. We strongly encourage you to check it out. We have a great panel of guests. We have Dr. Laura Stone, an emergency doctor and mother of 2 boys, entrepreneurs Gail O'Connor and Erica Hogan, and Algoma University's president and vice chancellor Asma Venza will be joining us, as well as we're announcing our recipient of the Athena Award for this year. Thank you again, all of you. This concludes our Fireside Chat, and I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.